You know, some pastors get kind of hung up talking about climate change. To me, it's biblical faithfulness 101.
Christians aren't the only ones talking about apocalyptic times.
The Bible warns of great mountains of fire and powerful storms as signals of the apocalypse. Some evangelicals see echoes of the end times in the ongoing climate crisis. And as Election Day approaches, they're urging Christians to step up.
I think the climate crisis requires everyone.
But for decades, many conservative evangelical leaders have discredited human-caused climate change.
You may have heard from your kids that the earth is soon going to be an uninhabitable hellscape.
And any good scientist is skeptical.
It's a snowball.
Fueling denialism among the evangelical community.
Climate change for Joe Biden and the Democrats has turned into climate crazy.
Today, they're the largest religious group in the U.S. and the most likely to doubt climate change.
Climate denialism is pervasive because climate misinformation has been pervasive. And unfortunately, it has been my own evangelical community that's been one of the primary targets of that misinformation.
In 2016, white evangelical voters made up a third of President Trump's votes. And in 2020, they stayed faithful to Trump.
Global warming is going to be nuclear weapons. Nobody talks about that. They don't ever mention it, but they talk about an ocean that's rising, which will give you slightly more beachfront property if it happens.
When you see those folks with those microphones using that negative rhetoric, it's frustrating because then it makes everyone else just assume that, oh, that's what anyone that identifies as Christian or might use the label evangelical is going to believe. When in reality, that's not true.
As glaciers melt and sea levels rise and greed wants to run the show, the people of God must show up. Come on with it.
Caleb Haynes is an evangelical pastor at a small church in Nashville. His congregation discusses creation care, the Christian duty to honor God's green earth.
It's like saying, I don't care about my neighbor or my neighborhood or anything if I say that climate doesn't affect the way that I vote. There you go. Look at that. Boom. Growing up in the church, we didn't talk maybe any really about the environment. And I think that that's a pretty common experience. To me, when I read my Bible, it's all in there as far as like, what does it mean to be a people who are faithful stewards of God's creation? In an age when our current rates of overconsumption are eliminating the futures of the unborn, the people of God must show up. The story of Adam and Eve. Our original sin here was assuming that we could consume any way we want and that there wouldn't be consequences. Just look at the natural world that we're a part of. I mean, it's a wasteless place. Just as a leaf falls down from a tree and breaks apart and becomes nitrogen and feeds the soil and something else grows, this is how God designed it to be, that literally everything feeds everything else in an endless loop of resurrection.
Haynes is part of the Evangelical Environmental Network, a nonprofit that runs climate action campaigns for Christians. The group is spearheaded by Jessica Moorman, an evangelist who wears two hats, climate scientist and reverend.
When it comes to wanting clean air, clean water, a safe climate, that's something that we all want. This shouldn't be a partisan issue, and that's what we're looking to see happen.
Moorman and other evangelical environmentalists see the climate crisis as a matter of protecting unborn children.
It is the unborn who are among the most vulnerable to climate harms from extreme heat to air pollution caused by fossil fuels. Climate harms are linked to preterm birth and even stillbirth. Climate care is truly a pro-life issue.
What's another way that we could go from bad news to good news? Science is a tool that God has given us to learn about this world. Why would you not want to expose kids to that, right?
At Hope Academy GSO in Greensboro, Adam Hubert incorporates climate into his middle school science classes at the faith-based school.
You know, it's just hard when you're standing in front of a classroom and you're talking about the climate crisis, and you're looking at the people that if we don't change our actions, like they're gonna inhabit this world that they didn't create.
Adam says in Black and brown evangelical spaces, addressing climate change is vital.
I believe that white evangelicals have this ability to deny or pretend that something is not existing. I think we see that in racial injustice. I think we saw that in the pandemic, and we definitely see it with the climate crisis. A lot of folks on the margins, particularly Black and brown folks, are on the front lines, whether that's living in urban neighborhoods that are extremely hot or living in low-resourced rural communities that are kind of at risk for these floods, these storms, and they don't have things to distance themselves from it.
It makes me feel like kind of mad because we're still living here and we should be taking care of the planet that God gave us.
A way for me to care and is to act on climate. So that's who I choose to vote for, products I consume.
I used to never think it was a big deal, but now it's a bigger issue in my head because it is our future. Like, you can stop it, we just don't try.
I've never had a student push back or a parent call and say, hey, you were talking to our kids about climate change. Where's that in the Bible?
I haven't heard anybody at my church talk about climate change.
At church, we rarely talk about climate change. I think we should change that and begin talking about it more.
We should all take immense caution as the people of God. Anytime there's a pastor or a preacher or a person that we look up to who says, make sure you vote for that guy right there, I think we should all take extreme caution in those situations.